So, welcome back, y'all. Or, whatever. So, I know it's been a minute. I'm very bad at, time management. But today we're going to talk about my favorite subject in the world, which is World War II. There is a lot of misconceptions with World War II, such as just how much of the German military were Nazis, how much of the German military were actually Germans born in Germany, the fact that Adolf Hitler wasn't actually German, he was Austrian, so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of misconceptions with this time period. A lot of people, especially younger people, automatically think that World War II started, especially here in America, that World War II started in 1941 with the attack on Pearl Harbor. And while they're right at some point in some aspects of it, they're also wrong, because the official date for the start of World War II is September 1st, 1939, with the invasion of Poland by Germany. But yes, the war in the Pacific, or the Pacific Theater as it's called, did begin in 1941, specifically December 7th. Well, not even then. The attack was on December 7th, 1941. President Roosevelt declared war on December 8th, 1941. But we're going to talk about the European theater for a while. Like I said, Adolf Hitler wasn't German. He was from Austria. He wasn't born in Germany, but he lived there. Adolf Hitler, controversial opinion in my that I have is that Adolf Hitler was a military genius. And I know if I say, he's a genius, people will be like, so what, you supported what he did against the Jews? No. But I'm smart enough to know that Adolf Hitler was a genius. And he was. But, I mean, there's a lot of issues that come about with the invasion of Poland. For example, that's what started World War II. I've had this conversation before with somebody that World War II had something to do with the Holocaust. The Holocaust wasn't found out until May of 1945. And that's, almost 80 years ago when they found Auschwitz and, all the other concentration camps and found out just how horrible the Nazis were. But again, not all of the German people believed in what Adolf Hitler said, especially about the Jewish people. A lot of the German military weren't Nazis. Actually, just about 12% were Nazis. And, going from 39, going to 1939, 40, and 41, England kept coming to America, hey, we need help. And America's like, no, look, I can't get involved. We're still recovering from World War I. We have the Great Depression going on. We can't get involved officially. See, President Roosevelt had a volunteer program for men who wanted to fight in the war to be sent over to Europe, to England, to fight with the English military. Whether that be the RAF, the Navy, the Army, what have you. They fought with Churchill's men. But if you look at America between 1939 and 1941, specifically up until December of 41, 90% of Americans, they didn't care. That's Europe's problem. That's not our problem. 10% were like, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. And only 5% of that 10% wanted to go fight. They believed that America should get involved. But you had the battle. You have people talk about the London Blitz. You have all that. What people don't talk about is the fact that some of the pilots that were flying for the RAF, the Royal Air Force, that is the English Air Force, were actually Polish. They took the fight to Germany to take back their home. When France surrendered to Germany in World War II, it was probably about 1940. I don't know, I'm not sure exactly when, but Adolf Hitler had the French leader sign the surrender in the same train car at the same table that Germany had been told to sign their surrender after World War One. But the fighting in Europe got worse. America was playing both sides of the war. We were giving oil to Japan. We finally ended up taking that away because we needed it. We were giving guns and bombs and tanks and planes and bullets and men to England and to France. Japan had a plan in 1941. Admiral Yamamoto came up with a plan to cripple the American Navy because he knew that if there was one country that got involved in the war, Japan wouldn't survive, and that was the U.S. So he attacks Pearl. He came up with the attack. He planned the attack. I don't think he led it, but he may have. But the attack was his idea, and it was a successful failure. Now, what I mean by that is their plan was to cripple the Navy, and they almost succeeded. We lost the Arizona, a couple other ships went down, but their main targets weren't even in dock. They were out doing maneuvers, and that was our carriers, the Hornet, the Yorktown, and most famous. And a lot of nerds will know this name, and that's the USS Enterprise. And no, I don't mean the ship from Star Trek, but that is actually where the ship got its name. The Enterprise is one of the most famous ships in history. During the time of the Pacific Theater, the USS Enterprise was given a nickname by the Japanese called the Grey Ghost, because every time that they thought 3 times that they sank the Enterprise, only to be proven wrong 3 times. They called her the Grey Ghost. But once the attack on Pearl happened, President Roosevelt gave his speech on December 8th. He declared war on Japan, and then Germany declared war on America, which caused America to declare war on Germany. But it's intriguing to think about that. A lot of people assume that the U.S. rode in on a white horse being a knight in shining armor, and that's not true. The U.S. did some pretty horrible stuff. About said a dirty word there. What history doesn't talk to you about, and my grandmother has told me this because she lived from 43. She was born in 43, so she's lived through the end of World War II. My grandparents told her these stories before they died. Germany wasn't the only one with concentration camps. Yeah, they were the horrible ones like Auschwitz and stuff. But the U.S. rounded up all Japanese-born citizens, whether they were born in America or not. If they were Japanese, they got locked up. They got put into camps. A lot like what the U.S. did, and still does, to the Native Americans. But when Admiral Yamamoto was congratulated on the attack on Pearl, he is famously quoted as saying, "I fear we have done nothing more than awaking a sleeping giant." So America and Japan went at it, and it was honestly some of the bloodiest conflicts. The Battle of Midway was partially why the U.S. won the war in the Pacific, because the reason I said the U.S. won the war in the Pacific is because the Pacific theater was strictly just Japan and America. There wasn't England, there wasn't Germany, there wasn't Italy or France. No, it was literally just the Empire of Japan versus the United States of America. I'm sure some of you, a lot of people hopefully, have heard of the movie Hacksaw Ridge. Desmond T. Doss was from Lynchburg, Virginia. Not that far from where I live, actually. But he was a conscientious objector, and he was the first conscientious objector to be awarded the Medal of Honor. He took, the way he describes it, and I've read interviews, I've watched the movie, I've read stories. He took Pearl Harbor personally, and I do this thing where I compare back then. So let's think back to 1941. America just got attacked. So 1942 comes around, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Some places in the U.S. Had recruitment offices popping up in every two to three blocks. The lines were so long that not everyone that was there to sign up for the military was able to sign up that day. And the ones that were denied or declared 4F unfit, well, they didn't take that they didn't take it too lightly, and they killed themselves. Which is a different time period. Nowadays, guys don't, men don't get as battle hungry as they did in the 1940s. My great-grandfather always struggled, which my grandmother has told me this as I've gotten older and obsessed with World War II. She's told me about my great-grandfather and how he worked on the atomic bomb over at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is not far from where I live in Kentucky. There's a story that a lot of people have heard, but they don't realize that they've heard it. Anybody that knows the song, anybody that knows Sabaton, the band, they've played music by talking about history, and one of their songs is called "No Bullets Fly." It's arguably my favorite one. So shout out to that. If y'all do want to see that, just like I said, go look it up. It's really good. It's the story of Franz Stigler and Charlie Brown. But I'll get to that in another video, because I got a whole topic of that. But let's look at the German military, the Luftwaffe, the Navy, the Army, the tank commanders. I've got a buddy that I work with who's related to General Erwin Rommel from the Nazi tank commander, and him and I talk about World War II all the time. He talks to me about tanks. I talk to him about aircraft because I'm an aircraft lover. I love them. P-51s, P-38s, P-19, P-7, P-40s, jeez, B-17s, B-29s, B-25, P-38s. If you guys look it up, or you want to, this is actually true. You can go online and look it up. But where I live, in Kentucky, there was actually a P-38 restored and flown here for a couple years. You can look it up, just P-38 Lightning in Kentucky, or you can look up the name of the plane, which is the Glacier Girl. She was beautiful. I mean, she still is. She's on display in Texas right now. Hopefully I'll get to go, eventually I'll see her again. But the German military is fascinating to me. Because after Germany declared war on America, they sent out a bulletin, or a message, if you will, to anybody. And the message said, all true Aryans must return to the fatherland to fight the cause. And the cause was World War II. And that went to all Germans. Germans living in England, Germans living in France, Germans living in Germany, Austria, Poland, whatever. It went to all of these. And it even found its way here to America. And a lot of soldiers were surprised by the fact that when they got to talking to the Germans and making fun of them, some of them responded in perfect English. And were from places like Chicago, New York, Pittsburgh, things like that. And it was surprising to them. It's like, it's like in the show, The Band of Brothers. It's a prime example of that. One of the guys from Oregon's talking to one of the German soldiers, and he's making fun of him. And then the German speaks English, and the German soldier speaks English, but he wasn't German, he was American. It's a whole mess there. And about 12... Now, I know this is going to be controversial. This is, again, a estimation. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'm fairly confident. 12% of the German military, and that's Navy, Army, the Luftwaffe, they were Germans. They were 100%. They were Nazis, excuse me. They were Nazis, 100%. But there's a difference between the German soldier that wasn't a Nazi versus the ones that were. And one of the examples is the uniform that the men in them wore. This is what was a Nazi. This is the SS. This is the Nazi troop. This is the ones that believed everything Hitler said. They believed in the Holocaust and the killing of the Jews. That's what a German Nazi looked like. That's their uniform. Now, the German uniform is different from that, as you can see. Here is a prime example of a German military uniform. They're different. On the collar, you don't have the SS. So that's how you knew who was who. And there's a lot of people going to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. But again, I'm doing the research. I am reading. I'm learning. And constantly, I love to learn. I've heard so many different stories from World War II that I had never heard before. I'm learning. But the main thing I really want to do is I want to correct misconceptions. And that's what this is about. As a U.S. citizen, there are 3 days in U.S. history that I personally believe brought this country together, but at the same time, it divided the country. Those 3 days are December 7th, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor, the attacks on September 11th, 2001, and then the day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed. I've been told stories back from my grandmother about when he got killed, and I'll share those in the other videos. But this country has never once been truly united against anything. Even now with the elections and stuff that we've had, you've got people going over here saying gun control. People over here like, what the hell does that even mean? But at the end of the day, history is fascinating, and you have to really dig deep to find this information, because a lot of it is lost. Go look back at the Civil War. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions there. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for saying things like that because it's the truth, people. It's the truth, y'all. History is written by the winners. The history textbooks that everybody has were written by, especially here in America, they were written by the U.S. They were written by people who won the war. But how many of those stories or what's in the history book were actual accounts from a soldier, from a pilot, from a sailor? It has been almost 84 years. Wait. Yes, 84. 84 years since the attack on Pearl Harbor. 80 years since the battle. It's been 82 years. 83 years since the Battle of Midway. Almost 80 years. This coming August will be 80 years since the atomic bomb was dropped. There's so much to unpack in just 6 years. It's fascinating, and I can't do it all in one video, so here's hoping it won't be a long time before my next one.